Hi, everyone. So we're just gonna take a minute or two to just let people, join the session. Some of them might be coming from another session. So yeah, I can see that people are joining now. So we will have three speakers in this session. Simon will go first, and then Emily, and then Liz. But it's going to be more of an interactive session. So some of the panelists might join, the other panelists when he or she is speaking. And at the end of the session, we will take some questions. If you can type in your questions in the chat box. If there's time, we will take some of the questions and we will ask our panelists to reply to them. If not, I would encourage everyone to just join the lounge and some of the forums. Our panelists will be joining there as well, so you can also follow up with them, with questions when you meet them there. I'm not going to take too much time away from our panelists. I think we'll just get on with the talks. So Simon, you're going first. So over to you.
Thank you, Jen, very much for the introduction. So welcome everyone from my side as well. My name is Simon. I'm working in a small consulting company, helping businesses making bigger changes, especially regarding sustainability. That's our main focus right now. But today we don't want to talk too much about sustainability, although we will cover it a bit, at least Liz, I think, will talk a bit about that as well. But we want to talk about how do we regulate technology feudalism, which is quite a peculiar topic. It's courtesy to Simon Wardley that we are covering this right now. He was suggesting this topic to us, and well, it got quite interesting when we did some preparation and research on it. And as you can see in this image here, it has to do something about the medieval times, about feudalism, and it has to do something with new technologies like cryptocurrencies, Web3. So we try to combine these two topics and make sense out of it. So first of all, we might need to get a common understanding of what feudalism actually is to try to see some patterns of feudalism in our modern world, and especially in specific technologies. And in order to explain this, what's the best way? Of course, it's a Wardley map to explain feudalism. And here we want to start our first map with the viewpoint of the monarch or king. We are now in a time of the 9th to 15th century. Mostly in Middle Europe. And the king has, well, one need, mostly cost of doing his business. And that's he needs an army and political support, because otherwise he can get invaded by other kings. There are a lot of small little kingdoms in Central Europe at the time. And he also needs political support so he doesn't get toppled from his throne. And when we talk about an army in the medieval times, it's not about the standing army, it's not about common folks, it's about the nobility, because it's quite expensive to have an armor, have a sword, to have the right training. So it's all about nobility. So what the king actually needs are vassals who give him an army and political support. And of course, the vassals won't do that for free. They want some kind of compensation for their service. And that's, of course, getting by generating some kind of income. And one thing a monarch has or a king has in this time is land. Now he owns the land. So what he does is he grants some land to his vassals and give them the right to collect taxes in part of the harvest and the produced goods of the people. He still owns the land, but he gives them away for the rights to, well, have land working. But of course, if we talk about working land to collecting taxes, we need people to work on. So we need some kind of stable workforce in this country, on this land, for which the vassal can get some taxes from. And the key part here of feudalism is, which is interesting and which we will try to discover when we talk about modern technologies, is that we have the situation that the stable workforce, or the peasants, so to speak, are bound to the land. So if I'm a peasant at this time and I wanted to travel to another country or just move because I think it's better in the other kingdom or better under the other vessel, I'm not allowed to do that. I'm bound to the land. I have to get the agreement of the vessel for myself to move around. So we have this particularly bound here to the land, which is important as an aspect, which we will see when we talk about new technologies. So again, it's a monarch. He owns the land. He gives the land away for some support to vessels. The vessels run the land, and the peasants are basically owned by the vessels and cannot do much about that. They have to work there in order to, still live. Moving on to our present day, we have some exciting new technologies, at least if we look at press and people who are really interested in these kind of new technologies. And one of which most of you probably heard about is the blockchain technology, mostly known for their appliance regarding cryptocurrencies, but another technology which derived from the blockchain idea are the non-fungible tokens, or NFTs. And what an NFT does basically is to work as a reference of ownership over a specific thing. It could be a physical asset, but oftentimes, as we see right now, we have digital assets like an image. No? I can buy a meme picture, and have an NFT, which basically says, okay, I am the owner of said meme. And this NFT gets saved in the blockchain, which is decentralized database. So I feel like I am saved about somebody changing the database and removing my reference of ownership here. An important thing to notice here is that it's just a reference of ownership. So the actual image in this example case isn't saved on the blockchain. So it's just a link to an external server. As you can see here in this image, there might be a third-party company who runs or owns a server, and on the server this image is hosted, and I have my NFT which has a link to the server, which works as a reference. But of course, there can happen this situation where this connection here is cut because the server gets down, the owner of the server removes the assets here, and then I would still have my NFT saved on the blockchain, but I wouldn't have the image already. So it's kind of problematic as a real safeguard for my ownership of a digital asset. Moving on, and we will get to this issue back again. Simon Wardley, when he was telling us about this topic, was giving us also the example of Axie Infinity, which is quite an interesting online game. And as you can see, it looks really nice. It looks really children friendly. The basic idea is that you buy or rent or get a Pokemon-like character. They are called Axies, and these Axies fight against each other in an online game. So you fight against other people who have also an Axie, and over time your Axie gets more powerful. You can get some land and items in this game. So it sounds like just another online game where you have some character development implemented here. The one thing which is really different about Axie Infinity is that everything you can own in this game is bound to an NFT. So what they actually do is they offer people the ability to buy Axies or other items here in this game, like land or bundles or rooms, whatever. And you buy them with NFTs or actually money. So what you could think about is you get into this game, you are successful in playing this game, and you make money out of it by getting new items, getting new lands, and then selling them on the market. And this is enabled by the ability that you have this kind of reference of ownership provided by an NFT. And for at least a time, it was really a big thing. At least the provider and owner of Axie mentioned on their website that they traded $3.6 billion over their marketplace, so a huge amount of money. The most expensive Axie, according to them, was sold for over $800,000. So it's not about a few bucks; it's really about big money, which you seemingly can make in this game. So let's have a look at Axie from a mapping point of view. And we start from the player perspective. And as was mentioning, it feels like that you can make money with Axie Infinity, though that's the need we are starting here from. And in order to make money with Axie Infinity, you have to earn some tokens, like, for example, a land or some items, which you then want to sell to cash out. And of course, you need this Axie game character in order to play the game and get those items, those tokens. And one thing which is quite problematic or special about this game here is that usually when you buy a game or start playing a game, you get a character to start with for free. But here in this game, you have to buy an Axie to get started, so the game character. So you have to pay a fee for that. Usually you would seem that it would be the more common thing to do is that you buy that. But as you can see here, at least in 2020, there was a time where the average Axie costs around $400. So it was quite a hefty sum to get into this game. And for specific reasons, this game got really popular in the Philippines, for example, where especially young people for this time period had troubles getting a job. So they were had a lot of time, and they were interested into getting any kind of money out of this game. So during this time, there raised a new opportunity for them, because there were some existing gaming guilds in the game who owned already a lot of Axies, and they were telling, okay, we rent you our Axie, you play with this Axie, you don't have to pay the whole, don't have to buy the Axie, but you work for us. No? And when you work long enough, you will earn enough items in game that we will give you some of them, and then you will be able to own your own Axie and make maybe a living out of it. That's at least the promise here. From the technology point, again, we have this needs or this requirement that there needs to be some cash out. This is being dealt by having an NFT market, and the NFT, the reference of ownership of the Axie, for example, or any other tokens. The whole renting ability, as well as the NFT market regulations, are all given by the terms and conditions and the market regulation. One example, which is quite interesting, they only allow to cashing out every 14 days to somehow regulate how much money gets into and out of this game. And the provider of this game created their own Ethereum-linked sidechain. So they had their own blockchain network, which was running the NFTs, but also the cryptocurrencies, which they, again, derived from the Ethereum. So, and this is quite an interesting thing you can see with Wardley mapping down here below. When we look at the provider, they are required for the game environment, of course. They provide the terms and condition, they provide the cryptocurrencies, they provide the market regulation, and they provide the whole blockchain network. So you can see a lot of connection here to this provider, which could be seen as something really problematic. Speaking of problematic, when you look up Axie Infinity on Wikipedia, you can see some really peculiar stories about it. No? It was for a time being seen as a form of gambling, because the amount of money you can get from an item or an Axie was really fluctuating over time. So we weren't sure if you can make a lot of money out of it, or if your asset you already bought or owned is really worth something over the next weeks. For example, in February 2020, the average money people had to spend for an Axie was $400. In March 2020, it was $20. So if I would have invested a lot of money into Axies, I would have lost a lot of money over the time. As was mentioning, it was seen as a main source of income for a lot of people in the Philippines, especially, even though that people or the financial department also saw it as a taxable income. So working in Axie Infinity really had you pay taxes for it. And in March 2020, hackers compromised the whole network and stole roughly 620 million worth of cryptocurrency, which of course had something to do with the decline of money here. So it's quite an interesting story for itself, but where's the connection to the feudalism here? And if we look at the map and try to pinpoint where we can see the patterns of feudalism here in this system, we can look at the provider Sky Mavis as the monarch. Now, the monarch who owns the land, the game environment. The monarch who states the laws. He says what are the market regulations, what are the terms and conditions. The monarch who has vassals, feudal lords who suck in new people by renting out the axes and getting more people into the game, therefore creating more demand for the axes, raising the prices, having more market activity from which the monarch then gets his taxes, or let's say his or her income. And of course, we can look at the players as peasants who are just in this whole system without much control of it. And one specific point here we wanted to look out for is the that people are bound to the land. And in this case, the axes, the game characters, my assets, so to speak, are bound to this game. Now, in the case that the provider closes up the game, changes the rules, maybe gives axes free away, my assets are getting worthless. I'm not able to move around these assets to another game. It's the same with the image. In the case the server gets shut down, my reference of ownership I still have with the NFT is quite worthless since the game or the image isn't available anymore. So that's where we can see one connection to feudalism with technologies like NFTs. And with that, I would like to head over to Emily.
Hi, excuse me. Let me share my screen as well. So you should be able to see that. So I'm on the same board that Simon was on. We actually tried to kind of, we spent a lot of time talking when we were planning this so that actually we're building on top of what each other are saying. So if you go into the board, you can find everything that we were, everything we've worked on and all the links there. So when we talked about regulation, I kind of went into this slight hole of what might regulation look like when we think about cryptocurrency, but also kind of building on top of what Simon was saying, where kind of where similarities with feudalism might be, but really kind of looking at from the end user point of view. So I haven't dug too far past individuals, and people is what really interests me. Just realised I haven't introduced myself, but my name's Emily Webber. I work in kind of agile organizational consultant, and my real interest is people and how people interact with each other and how you create environments for people to be their best. So this focus of people and how they're affected by the whole kind of cryptocurrency, I guess, market ecosystem was what interests me. So I wanted to touch on 3 points, and I won't talk for too long, so I don't want to eat into Liz's time because she's going to have some interesting technical things to talk about. The first is around marketing and advertising. So when we look, so not everyone loses out everything when we look at cryptocurrency, but some people lose out massively. And the real challenge here, I think, first of all, is how people talk about, cryptocurrency and what the promise is. So the topic is so complex that not a lot of people can really understand it. It leads to lack of information and sensationalist claims. And we have things like, there's a lot of TikTok accounts, a lot of YouTube accounts that talk about how much money you can make. And this only becomes more appealing when we are going through challenging times where, like a pandemic, where people can't make money, or through a recession, or through some of the messaging that's going on at the moment around what people can and can't afford. There is another message, of course, of kind of utopian financial equality, where we cut out bankers. But if you read these messages, it's this idea that you have this guaranteed get rich quick scheme, and there isn't really speculation. Invest, buy. Look at all these people that made all this money. Look at all these amazing cars that people are able to buy. Those people that bought into something like Bitcoin early, they made money. Other people are still trying to invest now in that and in altcoins to try and get to this point where you can buy a Lamborghini thanks to your investments. So seeing these repeated positive messaging is very appealing. But what we start to see when we look into what's going on is that actually this as a market replicates what we have in the financial systems as well, is that less than 100 participants control over 51% of wealth in the ecosystem. And so that free market doctrine isn't necessarily what's really going on. This financial system starts to replicate other financial systems that we have, and those people that have the information and access to knowledge are the ones that are able to profit better off of something like this. Liz, I think you had a point. What was your point about the 51% that you had yesterday?
Yeah, so it's not just about this power thing. When you've actually got more than 51% in the hands of very few people, they can rewrite the blockchain and force that consensus on other people. So you could do something like, you know, I take my £1 million worth of cryptocurrency and I sell it to you for real money, and I take the real money and then I rewrite blockchain so that transaction doesn't exist, and I've still got all the cryptocurrency. So like there's this notion that having the 51% in the hands of a small group of people is really, really bad where cryptocurrencies are concerned.
Yeah, and I think it just exacerbates this inequality that exists, which is counter to the original message, I think. There's also this idea as well that there's an interesting paper here which talks about, it's called Preying on the Poor. They argue that the trajectory disproportionately impacts poor and vulnerable communities. There's this advice, and I think this is really important to know, that when you're investing in something like cryptocurrency, you're actually speculating. There's huge amounts of risk there. Everything is going up and down. So this idea that you should only invest what you can afford to lose is fine if you have something to lose. For those people that don't have anything to lose, they're more likely to throw more money in, because if you can't afford to pay your energy bills anyway, you might as well just try and find a way to make the money so that you can survive. So the question I have, and I don't have an answer to it, is can messaging marketing be regulated, as it's often peer-to-peer, and even should it be, because that kind of fundamentally undermines some of the ethos that we have around the internet anyway. The second... Sorry,
just another point to the marketing perspective. No, what would be my motive if I have invested a lot into bitcoins, for example, and I have some kind of influence on the internet? No, I can influence people. Of course, my goal would be to get more people into bitcoins, because if there's a higher demand on bitcoins, my existing bitcoins rise in value, so I can sell them for a higher price. So you can see that there's a motive for people who are already, let's say, the lords of the system here, to get more people sucked into it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there's another kind of social aspect to that, to social media in general, and what gets you hits, what gets you likes, and what gets your posts pushed up, because that makes money as well. So if you're in this place where you want you want everything to go up, and you want your social media to go up, the incentive is to carry on with the stories. The second thing I just wanted to touch on was around fraud, because there's so much money involved. People are, of course, looking for ways to exploit that and make money. And there are stories out there. There's a really interesting podcast called The Missing Crypto Queen that talks about OneCoin, which was set up. It was billed as a cryptocurrency, and it was billed as the Bitcoin killer, and actually was a fake cryptocurrency. So this woman here, Ruja Ignatova, Dr. Ruja Ignatova, set up these kind of, she had a history of pyramid schemes, and she set up these big marketing events, got people very excited about this new coin that was going to make everyone rich. The messaging still being that this is a get rich quick scheme. What transpired is actually it wasn't even a cryptocurrency. There's no blockchain behind it at all. There was an exchange, but you could buy some very kind of odd things on there, not anything of any use. And she ended up kind of running away, and she's on the FBI's most wanted list at the moment and can't be found. But at the end of that, a lot of people lost a lot of money by investing in it. And the way that they sold that currency was they sold training courses, which came with free OneCoins that never transpired into anything. Bringing back kind of to feudalism and the pyramid scheme is that kind of really replicates that idea that you have the king at the top. You have vassals that are actually out there kind of protecting bits of their down chain. They're selling something to the people further down their down chain, which are locked in because they can't move because they would move their income, and they're continuing to sell, where the people at the bottom are actually losing out. There are articles out there around this idea that cryptocurrency is a Ponzi scheme itself, or is a pyramid scheme itself. And to your point earlier, Simon, about if you are making money out of cryptocurrency and it's in your interest for it to maintain or to rise in value, then you're going to continue to push that message. So where does that kind of make you sit in terms of the vassals that are trying to get people to buy into it? So it pushes your value up. I know pyramid schemes are illegal, and that doesn't stop them happening. There's also a recent proposal passed by a European Council that says cryptocurrencies will soon be obligated to abide by markets in crypto assets rule, which means they would need to have a license to operate in the region. See, that's also local rather than necessarily global. So do people have enough information to make informed decisions? Finally, I just wanted to touch quickly on gambling, and I won't dig too deeply into this, but I think this is a huge aspect of crypto where a lot of people are getting addicted to those highs and lows of the market, and not just to the financial aspect of it. So it's not just about making and losing money, it is about being addicted to the dopamine hits and the feelings of that. And actually a lot of gambling lines and receiving much more calls from people that are addicted to cryptocurrency. I want to pass on to Liz, so I'm just going to want to leave this question here, which is what would happen if cryptocurrency speculation, and it is speculation rather than investing, was recognized as gambling, and how would that affect the people that actually offer the exchanges, the people that are selling crypto, and the people that are affected by that gambling addiction as well. So what might that look like? And I think, Simon, you mentioned gambling.
Just wanted to continue before Liz continues that there's an example for most of people who had something to do with computer gaming know about the game FIFA. It's a soccer game, quite popular in the whole world. And they developed also in-game currency over time, and you can put in your real money to get some in-game currency, and with that you can buy cards which then relate into better plays you can use in your online game when you do competition, for example. You can also earn something in there. And of course, if you buy these cards, it's kind of set up as a slot machine thing. So it's kind of getting people addicted to buying more of these cards. And there are some countries, like for example, the Netherlands, I think, that banned this practice. And or I think it was somewhere in the Benelux area. Of course, but there are countries that are banning that, and they have to adjust either the game or stop providing this game into these countries, because otherwise they get big fines from the government. So there are ways on how to regulate that. Of course, it's depending on the governments here to make the right move.
Yeah, I think it's no, we talked a little bit about gambling in some of our sessions as well. And I think it's no accident that a lot of betting shops or bookies are set up in areas that are poorer than other areas, which kind of goes back to this idea that when people don't have anything, they're more likely to take big risks and gamble. Once they do that, they're often getting hooked into this idea of, checking your phone constantly to see what's going on with your cryptocurrency. And it's a vicious circle. I will leave you those 3 posed questions, and I hand over to Liz.
Thank you. I'm just going to share. Yes, I do want to stop Emily from sharing, and I will share my screen. Okay, so I'm actually working with cryptocurrency, crypto at the moment. So my current clients, I'll give them a little bit of a shout out. They're working in the crypto space, but it's not the crypto space that burns the planet, because I care deeply about that stuff. So to give you my background, I've been doing agile coaching for a very long time. Before that, I was a dev. This year, I'm actually back in the code again for the first time in a long time. Super, super exciting. But I've been immersed a little bit in this space. I'm not an expert, so if I've got anything wrong here, I apologize. Please go map this stuff yourself. It's really, really interesting, this stuff. So to give you a little bit of an idea, we always think of Bitcoin when we talk about crypto. Bitcoin's the best known of the cryptocurrencies. So I wanted to just start with how this stuff starts, why do people want this crypto in the first place? So I'm starting with the customers up here. So there's a lot of different groups get involved with cryptocurrencies. There's startups who are creating new cryptocurrencies or working with existing cryptocurrencies in new ways. There's crypto traders. There's people who are mining the cryptocurrency. So I'll talk a little bit about the miners and why they come in. There's exchanges where you can exchange your cryptocurrencies for real money. There are regulators. So I'll talk a little bit about some of the regulation that's happening. And then you've got the naive newcomers. So one of the big problems we're seeing at the moment is, independent of all the fraud happening where people are selling cryptocurrencies that don't even exist, there's a lot going on where people are creating these new cryptocurrencies, pumping them out, putting adverts out. So there's no regulation around the cryptos you can advertise, right? So they're advertising these new coins on the tube all over the world. And then as soon as people have started buying them and they see the price go up, and it's essentially a Ponzi scheme, right? So as soon as they've got like $1 million worth of these cryptocurrencies sold, they just forget about it and make another one. And of course, those cryptocurrencies are then worthless. There's no way of spending them. There's no investment in that ecosystem. So they're worth nothing. The point is, there is no shortage of these naive newcomers. They are a commodity, right? And it's so easy to get people to believe the hype. Everybody wants to believe that that other people are trustworthy and that they can be rich too. So there's a lot going on about just getting people to buy into this hype. So that's one of the things that's happening. The other thing that's happening, which is the thing that I care really deeply about, is it's burning the planet. So Bitcoin particularly works on this thing called proof of work, and a lot of cryptocurrencies, most cryptocurrencies work with proof of work. So the idea is you solve this really complicated mathematical problem that also at the same time proves that the transaction chain is consistent. So it basically seals the transactions into this blockchain. And if you want to add a new transaction to that blockchain, you have to do a bunch more of proving these mathematical problems. And it takes a huge amount of computing power. And part of the reason why Bitcoin is worth so much is because the amount of computing power it is taking to prove these problems is growing and growing and growing. So I've got for you, I did put the link to the Miro board in the chat, so you can go have a look. These are all linked to the articles, so you can have a look at them. The amount of energy that it takes now to keep Bitcoin going, to mining is basically solving these problems, and whoever solves the problems gets a little bit of Bitcoin back themselves. So that's how they make money from it. The amount of energy it's taking is equivalent to Argentina's output, right? It is about 0.5%. So that's, and this is the other thing that's happening, right? We keep making more renewable energy, more renewable resources. 10% of all the new energy that we come up with goes straight to Bitcoin. That's this new energy here, right? This is all going straight to Bitcoin. So proof of work, I regard as just one of the most accidentally evil things. I don't think anyone who created this realized the impact it was going to have. I actually own a Bitcoin. It was bought for me for £100 back when a Bitcoin was only £100 for my birthday. I feel icky having it. I would watch it burn to zero if we could get rid of that, because the cost to the planet is always going to be disproportionately on the poorest people, right? And it's going to kill our ecosystem. I'm an eco activist, so you know I don't need to rant on about global warming. I'm pretty sure everybody here knows about what's going on there. Anyway, so there's some other really interesting stuff happening as well. So particularly with Ethereum. Ethereum is a cryptocurrency that also allows you to run smart contracts. So bits of code that when a particular condition happens, it moves the Ethereum around. So Ethereum gets given to particular people. But it's really easy when you're doing something new. And I always talk about Carnarvon and complexity. So whenever you do something new, the chances are you'll probably get it wrong. So all of these people are writing these smart contracts and doing this interesting stuff with crypto. So they bridge it, they make bridges between either real currencies or stable coins, other cryptocurrencies, and whatever they're working with. These smart contracts and bridges are often easy to exploit. They've often got bugs in that people can take advantage of. So they end up generating all these exploits and hacks and bugs. And people can take advantage of this. It's absolutely rife with criminality. So I've also got for you a ton of things around all the hacks, the largest cryptocurrency hacks. And Emily talked about, you know, this 600 and something million pound hack. These are all, so many of them in 6 digits. You know, that much money being taken out of these ecosystems. Really interesting thing happened just in this last month, this £160 million Wintermute hack here. So what happened with Wintermute is people also want to be seen to be in the crypto space. It's really cool. And one of the things you can do if you want to see really cool is you can get yourself a vanity address. And a vanity address is basically a public key that's encoded in such a way, it's letters and numbers. Once it's encoded, it's just a long string of letters and numbers. But part of that string has something meaningful in. So I've actually got a vanity address. It's got KEOG at the beginning of it, right? It's not public. You don't get to see it. But these people made their address public because they wanted everybody to see it. They wanted it to look really cool. But the problem is the company that was making these addresses didn't use sufficiently random methods. And when it's not random enough, it makes the crypto easier to solve. So the whole idea of public and private keys is it's really difficult to work out what the private key is from the public one. But if you make the seeds that generates that public one not random enough, it's easier to guess and easier to crack. And that's actually what they did. So these hackers, these black hat hackers, cracked the vanity address, they cracked the private key, and then just stole all the money. So really weird stuff happens in this space. So something interesting happened with Ethereum back in, I can't remember when it was, but basically they had a bunch of people come in, they were funding this effort, there was a lot of money involved, a lot of Ethereum on this chain involved, and this hack happened, and this group lost hundreds of millions of dollars, as you do with these big hacks, right? And the Ethereum developers went, that's not right. And that's so much money, and it's people we care about who are losing that money. So now, if I, an average Joe, lost money on the Ethereum blockchain, everybody would be like, yeah, you need to write your contracts better. But because these were people they cared about, they were part of this lords of the land, they were part of this elite group, they said, we're going to rewrite the blockchain. So they basically forked the blockchain. And they said, this new thing, this new rewrite without that transaction in is now Ethereum. And more than 50% of the community have to agree for that to continue to be Ethereum. So a bunch of people went, yeah, all right, we'll go with it. And that continues to be Ethereum, but it actually caused a fork. So there's now another currency called Ethereum Classic, which continues because they had this ethos that no, we shouldn't have lords of land. You shouldn't be able to make this decision. If you made a mistake and it's on the blockchain, it's on the blockchain forever. We don't rewrite the blockchain. So meanwhile, Ethereum, which is the more used of the currencies, has now fought another couple of times as well. So this keeps happening, and it's all driven by the core developers and the people who are more invested in this. So the whole idea of this stuff was it was going to be decentralized. It was going to be equitable. But I, as an average Joe, I can't get people to rewrite the blockchain if I lose money through a hack. But these elite groups, they can drive this. So I just find that really.
It's almost like there's some inequality in the system here.
Yeah, it is. It's like a few people have more power than other people. So I just find it really interesting that they deliberately created this decentralized stuff, and yet there's still these central figures in it. The exchanges also have a huge amount of power. So the exchanges which set the rate, you have to have an enormous amount of trust with them, because a lot of people store their currencies with the exchanges. It's just nuts. So the exchanges, basically, if they decide they don't want to trade in your currency anymore, they can just dump it. We're not doing that anymore, and suddenly that currency will be worth less. And this actually has happened with some of the coins, because the regulators have stepped in particular countries. Now, the regulators can't regulate decentralized cryptocurrencies, but they can regulate the exchanges. And they've said, we are really concerned about these coins. If you're going to trade in these coins, here are the regulations that we need you to have. Here are that you need to be backed by this much money, etc. And the exchanges have probably gone, yeah, we're not trading those coins anymore, thank you. Right? So they can make that decision too. So again, you've got this centralized power in this decentralized system. There's been a lot of people talking about how Bitcoin's going to solve all of these world issues, it's going to solve all of these inequalities, it's going to be wonderful. And I keep, like, this year, there are people talking about the wonder of Bitcoin, the marvel that's going to happen. Bitcoin is 14 years old. It's as old as Tesla's rotor, the first ever Tesla. It's old as the Internet of Things. There's a ton of things that got created the same year as Bitcoin that are established, well-used technologies. Right now, the only things you can buy with Bitcoin are Lamborghinis, if you were lucky enough to be in that first round of investment and your cryptocurrency really did go up that much, or crime stuff, drugs. And money laundering. And that's what's happening on the Bitcoin chain. So I think anyone talking about the wonder in this Genesis and custom emerging thing, Bitcoin's down here. Anything we were going to do with Bitcoin will have already emerged. All right. It's old enough that should have happened already. So were you about to say something, Simon?
Yeah, just wanted to mention that just keep remembering from Simon's keynote this morning, where he talked about sovereignty of countries, and he mapped out a digital territory and economics. And I feel like this is kind of next to what we have as existing currencies, existing physical territory. It's a new area, and it's get neglected so much. And therefore we have, to some degree, bandits running around and doing stuff here. And it seems so easy to create your own currency, to get people sucked into the next big cryptocurrency, and just having a blast by getting people invested into it and taking out the money.
Right, exactly. So, I mean, we haven't really talked a lot about regulation. We've talked a lot about the need for regulation. So let me talk a little bit about how regulations happen. So China, for instance, completely banned proof of work mining. They went, we're banning it. They haven't actually necessarily been able to enforce that, because people have just gone and started mining in their own houses rather than these gigantic server farms. But it's still happening, but they did actually ban it, right? So countries can ban this stuff. There's something even more interesting that happened very recently. On the 15th of September, this thing actually took place. So Ethereum was using proof of work. It was burning the planet. And they've worked out that this was a really bad thing. The core devs did something which I thought was great. They used this centralized power they have, and they went, we're going to move to proof of stake. Now, proof of stake, it's got its own problems. It's still got it's got even more of a power structure, because for proof of stake, you basically set aside some of your Ethereum and you go, we guarantee that the block that this transaction chain is that we're posting this money on is correct. If it turns out not to be the case, we'll lose all this currency we've posted, right? So that you're putting a stake into proving that this thing is correct. And you get some Ethereum back after some while. So that's how it works, I think. But basically, because you're not solving so many complicated problems anymore, you're burning the planet a lot less. And on the 15th of September, they did what's called the merge. So they had this chain ready to go with all the transactions, but with proof of stake instead of proof of work. And they moved everybody across onto this new chain. And there was a lot of concern that Ethereum would lose in price, and it did drop quite dramatically, but it's not dropped to zero. It looks reasonably stable at the moment. So I'm actually really glad they did that. And the worldwide consumption of electricity dropped 0.2%. And bearing in mind that Bitcoin, which is the same as Argentina, is 0.5% of the world's electricity, like dropping 0.2%, it's a big deal. It's a big deal. So I think they showed that they can regulate themselves to some degree as well. Excuse me. Okay, so there's also something else really interesting that's going on that I just want to flag up, and I'm going to give a shout out to R3. They're my current client. They're doing something called distributed ledger technology, which you can think of like centralized blockchain. So the idea is that you have a gateway that's controlled by somebody that allows you into the network, but it's not anonymized anymore. So a lot of these problems are being caused by the anonymity of the players involved. If you can get rid of that anonymity, you don't need to do proof of work anymore. You don't need to do proof of stake. You can just cryptographically sign stuff and say, hey, this is my key. This is me proving that it's me. I've signed it. And that's really, really cheap. So there's a bunch of really, R3 aren't the only players in this space, but I think I've seen the energy figures and I really like their energy figures. They're also quite environmentally minded. So shout out to R3 there and Corda, which is their product. There is a bunch of stuff happening which can just directly be regulated, because of course, if you know who the players are, you can hold them to account. So that was the last thing I wanted to talk about. There are some possibilities for regulation, but I do think that we actually need, I think we've shown that there is such a need for regulation here, and there is such a need to deal with some of the power structures in this space.
Maybe one last comment before we probably have to wrap it up, as Jen is already popping up here. I feel like a lot of the issues we see here in this area, we have also in the classic financial room now, where we have too big to fail companies, or maybe banks who are doing something shady in absence of visibility in the press and the public. And I feel like it's all about, okay, do we actually want to change it? Is it really in the interest of the politicians to change the system here? And it's the same for the cryptocurrencies. And I mean, it was the idea to get away from the fiat system, to have it more independent, to not have the big players in place, and that's not going. It's not happening here. And I think we have the tools, even in let's say our normal financial system, to work on that. And Simon was mentioning something like 25% of the economy of a whole country can get thrown down if one of the big major players in an economy gets brought down. And I feel like if we don't manage this kind of too big to fail issue in our financial system as well, we will get into these issues here that they can do whatever they want and don't feel any repercussions. And same here in the cryptocurrency world.
Okay, thank you for that, Simon, and thanks, Liz and Emily, for your thoughts. It's very, very informative. All of the thoughts are, where we actually have run out of time for Q&A, but there's been interesting exchanges in the chat. So I would encourage everyone to just go and go to the lounge and network with our panelists there. Hopefully Liz, Emily, and Simon, you'll be there as well to meet up with our attendees. And thanks everyone for joining this session. There are obviously a lot more lined up for today, and I encourage you to check out the ones that are coming up in the triads. So this track is in the triads track. So do check out the agenda, and we'll see you at the later events. And thanks again, Simon, Liz, and Emily. So Liz has been involved in MapCamp for a while. We actually co-chaired the very first one with Simon Wardley. Emily spoke a few years ago when we did this at the Sadler's Well Theater, so which was a very good venue. And Simon actually have attended the event in person a few years ago, if I'm not mistaken, Simon. And
Yes,
you
back in
also
London, yeah.
attended virtually last year, and now he's a speaker. So I would encourage people as well to see if you'll be interested in giving talks. Just get in touch with the organizing team, and I'm sure if you've got an interesting proposal, we'll be happy to get them lined up for a session. So thanks again, everyone, and we'll see you in the lounge. Goodbye.